Commander Vex 9 stared at the holographic display with what humans would call a migraine, if his species had the misfortune of possessing such primitive neurological vulnerabilities. The blue-skinned Zenthari officer's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a nervous tic that had developed over his 40 standard cycles of military service. Never, in all those cycles, had he encountered a problem quite like this one. "Let me understand this correctly," Vex 9 said, his voice carrying the particular tone of someone who desperately hoped he had misunderstood everything. "A single human female has somehow convinced 3 entire rebel factions to unite under her command. His aide, a nervous young Zenthari named Kix-3, fidgeted with his datapad. The device trembled slightly in his 6-fingered grip. "Yes, sir. The reports are, well, they're quite extraordinary, sir." Extraordinary. Vex 9 repeated the word like he was tasting something unpleasant. That's one way to put it. Another way would be to call it a complete tactical impossibility that somehow happened anyway. He paused, studying the scrolling data. "What did you say her name was again?" "Captain Maya Torres, sir. Former Earth Defense Corps. Dishonorably discharged for creative interpretation of orders." Creative interpretation. Vex 9's laugh was about as bitter as fermented Coxian fruit. "I suppose creative is what we're calling open rebellion these days." The truth was far more complicated, and Vex 9 knew it. Maya Torres hadn't just been discharged, she had been exiled to the Outer Rim territories after refusing to follow what she called suicidally stupid orders during the Proxima campaign. Her exact words, according to the intercepted communications, had been considerably more colorful and anatomically creative. "Sir," Kix-3 ventured carefully, "the High Command is requesting immediate action. The United Rebel Forces have seized control of the Zerion system." "The Zerion system?" Vex 9's voice went flat. "Home to our primary weapons manufacturing facilities." "Yes, sir. And our secondary fleet yards." "Also yes, sir. And approximately 60% of our refined neutronium reserves." "I'm afraid that's also correct, sir." Vex 9 closed all 4 eyes and tried to remember a time when his biggest concern had been managing supply routes and filing status reports. Those had been simpler days, better days, days when humans were still safely contained on their little blue planet, arguing amongst themselves about who got to pollute which part of their atmosphere. How, he asked the universe in general, did we go from humans are primitive and harmless to humans are uniting our enemies and stealing our weapons? Kix-3 consulted his datapad nervously. "Well, sir, it appears that Captain Torres began by convincing the Thrakari rebels that their traditional honor-based approach to warfare was, and I quote, about as effective as attacking a plasma cannon with a pointed stick." She said that to the Thrakari? To their faces? Vex 9 felt something that might have been admiration creeping into his voice, followed immediately by horror at his own reaction. "According to surveillance recordings, yes, sir. She also suggested that if they wanted to actually win, instead of just dying gloriously, they might consider adopting what she called basic common-sense tactics." "And they didn't challenge her to ritual combat?" "They tried, sir. She declined the challenge and instead challenged their war chief to what she called a drinking contest with actual consequences." Vex 9 opened his primary eyes. "She outdrank a Thrakari war chief?" "No, sir. She cheated." "She cheated?" "Yes, sir. She modified her metabolism using a portable biofilter, then convinced the war chief that humans naturally possessed superior alcohol tolerance due to their Deathworld evolution. When he passed out, She declared herself the winner and appointed herself as tactical advisor. That's completely unethical. The war chief seemed to think it was hilarious, sir. He apparently told his warriors that any species clever enough to cheat that creatively deserved their respect. Vex 9 rubbed his temples with two hands while using the other two to access his personal files. Somewhere in his records was a psychological profile on human behavior that he had skimmed and dismissed as irrelevant. Now he was beginning to suspect it might have been the most important document he had ever ignored. "What about the Corvani separatists?" he asked, dreading the answer. "Ah." Kix 3's skin shifted to a pale yellow, the Zenthari equivalent of embarrassment. Captain Torres convinced them that their philosophical differences with the Thrakari were less important than their shared hatred of our administration. How? She organized what she called group therapy sessions. Group therapy. Yes, sir. She had both factions sit in circles and discuss their feelings about the war. Vex 9 stared at his aide for a long moment. "You're telling me that a human female ended a century-long blood feud with group therapy?" "Well, sir, there was also alcohol involved. Quite a lot of alcohol, actually, and some kind of human recreational drug called pizza." "Pizza is food, Kix 3, not a drug." "Are you certain, sir?" "The surveillance reports indicate it had a profound psychological effect on both factions." Vex 9 decided not to pursue that particular line of inquiry. His sanity was hanging by a thin enough thread as it was. "And the Velkari mercenaries?" "She hired them, sir." "With what funds?" "Rebels don't exactly have access to galactic banking systems. She promised them exclusive salvage rights to any Zenthari ships they destroyed, plus what she called performance bonuses based on the strategic value of their targets." "That's actually quite clever." "Sir?" "Nothing, Kix 3. Continue." "She also convinced them that humans were natural-born warriors from a Deathworld, and that serving under human command would enhance their reputation throughout the mercenary guilds. Is that true?" "About humans being natural-born warriors?" "About it enhancing their reputation." "Unknown, sir, but 3 major mercenary guilds have already sent recruitment offers to Captain Torres personally." Vex 9 felt his 4 stomachs performing what humans would probably call a synchronized swimming routine. This was getting worse by the minute. "Show me the tactical reports from the Zerion engagement." The holographic display shifted to show a 3-dimensional representation of the Zerion system. Red markers indicated the positions of the combined rebel fleet, while blue markers showed the Zenthari forces. What Vex 9 saw made him question everything he thought he knew about military strategy. "This formation," he said slowly, "it's not in any tactical manual I've ever studied." "No, sir. Our analysts believe Captain Torres developed it specifically for this engagement." "How?" "Unknown, sir. But the preliminary reports suggest she somehow convinced 3 completely different species with incompatible fighting styles to coordinate their attacks using a combination of traditional Thrakari honor tactics, Corvani stealth techniques, and Velkari mercenary pragmatism. That shouldn't be possible. The Thrakari refuse to use stealth, the Corvani won't engage in direct confrontation, and the Velkari only care about profit margins." "Yes, sir. Captain Torres appears to have worked around those limitations." Vex 9 studied the battle formation more carefully. It was, he had to admit, brilliant. The Thrakari ships formed the center of the formation, drawing enemy fire and attention while maintaining their precious honor. The Corvani vessels operated on the flanks, using their advanced cloaking technology to strike at vulnerable targets. The Velkari mercenaries focused on high-value assets, ensuring maximum profit while contributing to the overall strategy. "She turned their weaknesses into strengths," he murmured. "Sir?" "Nothing." Vex 9 minimized the tactical display and pulled up Torres's personal file. The image that appeared showed a human female with dark hair, brown eyes, and what humans called a smirk. It was not a particularly intimidating face by Zenthari standards. Most humans looked like bizarre, under-evolved primates to his species. But there was something in those brown eyes that made Vex 9 uncomfortable. It was the look of someone who had seen the universe's rules and decided they were more like suggestions. What do we know about her background? Born on Earth, colony world designation Terra Prime. Standard human upbringing, though she apparently showed early aptitude for what her instructors called unconventional problem-solving. Meaning? At age 12, she reprogrammed her school's security system to give her and her friends access to the cafeteria after hours. When questioned by authorities, she argued that the school's anti-hunger policies were inefficient and that she was conducting a feasibility study on alternative food distribution methods. She was stealing food and called it a research project. Essentially, yes, sir. She maintained that position throughout the disciplinary hearings. Vex 9 found himself almost smiling. Almost. What else? Standard military academy education, graduated with honors despite multiple disciplinary infractions. Her instructors noted that she had an unusual talent for inspiring loyalty in her subordinates, even when her methods were questionable. Such as? During a training exercise, she convinced her entire unit to fake their own deaths in order to ambush the opposing force from an unexpected direction. The exercise parameters specifically prohibited feigning casualties. And she argued that the enemy wouldn't follow exercise parameters in real combat, so neither should they. The instructors were apparently torn between disciplining her for rule violations and commending her for tactical innovation. Let me guess, they did both. Correct, sir. She received both a formal reprimand and a commendation for creative thinking. Vex 9 was beginning to understand why the human military had found Torres difficult to manage. She was the kind of person who saw rules as starting points rather than boundaries. Military service record. Exemplary, sir. Multiple decorations for valor, innovation, and leadership. Her units consistently outperformed expectations, even when assigned to seemingly impossible missions. Then why was she discharged? Kix 3's skin shifted through several colors before settling on a nervous orange. The official report cites irreconcilable differences with command structure and repeated refusal to follow direct orders. And the unofficial report? Sir, I don't think we should. Kix 3. Yes, sir. The unofficial report suggests that Captain Torres had strong opinions about the competence of her superior officers. She apparently expressed these opinions frequently and with considerable creativity. Give me an example. During the Proxima campaign, she was ordered to lead a frontal assault on a heavily fortified position. Her response was to submit a 47-page tactical analysis explaining why the order was, and I quote, so monumentally stupid that it could only have been conceived by someone who learned military strategy from a children's picture book. 47 pages. She included diagrams, sir, and mathematical proofs, and a cost-benefit analysis showing that the proposed assault had a 98% casualty rate, with a 3% chance of success. Was she correct? The assault was carried out by a different unit after Captain Torres was removed from command. Casualty rate was 96%. Mission failed. Vex 9 closed his eyes again. The PT picture was becoming clearer, and he didn't like what he was seeing. Maya Torres wasn't just some rogue human causing trouble in the Outer Rim. She was a brilliant military strategist who had been exiled by her own people for being right at the wrong time. Current status of the Rebel Alliance? Growing, sir. Intelligence reports suggest that Captain Torres has sent recruitment messages to 17 different resistance groups across the galaxy. 17? She's apparently offering them something called a franchise opportunity. A what? She's teaching them her tactical methods in exchange for a commitment to coordinate their activities. Each group maintains local autonomy, but agrees to share intelligence and resources. She's building a network? Yes, sir. A very effective network. Her message to potential recruits was intercepted by our communications division. Show me. The holographic display shifted to show a text transmission. Vex 9 read it with growing horror. Attention freedom fighters, resistance groups, and anyone else tired of being stepped on by bureaucratic morons in shiny uniforms. My name is Maya Torres, and I have a business proposition for you. The Zenthari Empire has been running roughshod over this galaxy for way too long, and frankly, their military tactics are about as sophisticated as a toddler having a tantrum. I've recently had some success in teaching proper warfare to folks who were previously getting their asses kicked on a regular basis. If you're interested in winning, instead of just making noble sacrifices, let's talk. Compensation negotiable. Satisfaction guaranteed. Empire's crushing defeat included at no extra charge. Vex 9 stared at the message for several long moments. She's treating rebellion like a business venture. A successful business venture, sir. 12 of the 17 groups have already responded positively. And the other 5? 3 are still considering the offer. 2 appear to have been completely wiped out by our security forces before they could respond. Show me the tactical projections if all 17 groups join her network. The holographic display shifted to show a galaxy-wide strategic overview. Red zones indicated areas under rebel control or influence. Blue zones showed Imperial territory. As Vex 9 watched, the projection ran through various scenarios based on the recruitment of additional rebel groups. The results were not encouraging. In the worst-case scenario, Kix 3 reported, Imperial control could be reduced by as much as 30% within 2 standard years. 30%? Yes, sir. Captain Torres appears to have identified critical weaknesses in our territorial control strategies. Such as? She's targeting supply lines, communication hubs, and isolated garrison worlds. Rather than engaging our main battle fleets directly, she's focusing on infrastructure and logistics. Vex 9 nodded slowly. It was, unfortunately, exactly what he would have done if he had been in Torres's position. The Imperial military was designed to fight large-scale fleet engagements against conventional enemies. It was not well equipped to handle a distributed network of coordinated guerrilla forces. Recommendations from the War Council? Admiral Kex 7 suggests immediate mobilization of the Third Fleet to crush the Rebel Alliance before it can consolidate further. And General Mox 12 recommends a diplomatic solution. He believes we can negotiate a settlement that addresses the legitimate grievances of the rebel groups. What's your assessment, Kix 3? The young aide's skin cycled through several colors before settling on a pale blue. Sir, with respect, I don't think either approach will work. Explain. Admiral Kex 7's plan assumes the rebels will engage in conventional warfare. But Captain Torres has already demonstrated that she won't fight on our terms. She'll use hit-and-run tactics, turn our strength against us, and probably find ways to make our own forces look incompetent in the process. And General Mach 12's diplomatic approach. Sir, have you read Captain Torres's psychological profile? The abbreviated version. She's not interested in negotiation or compromise. She wants to win, completely. According to her own statements, she considers the imperial government to be irredeemably corrupt and terminally stupid. She said that? Those were her exact words during her court-martial, sir. Vex 9 leaned back in his command chair, feeling the weight of the situation settling on his shoulders like a lead blanket. In his 40 cycles of service, he had faced down rebel fleets, negotiated with hostile alien species, and survived 3 major wars. But he had never encountered anything quite like this. Maya Torres wasn't just another rebel leader. She was something far more dangerous. A competent human with nothing left to lose and everything to prove. Kix 3. Prepare a classified report for High Command. Include all available intelligence on Captain Torres and her rebel network. Yes, sir. What should I recommend for immediate action? Vex 9 studied the strategic display one more time, watching the red zones slowly expand across the galaxy in the simulation. Recommend that we take this very seriously, and prepare for the possibility that we may have seriously underestimated the human species. Sir, humans are barely beyond their own solar system. Their technology is primitive, their military experience is limited, and their political systems are chaotic. All true, Kix 3. But apparently none of that matters when you're dealing with someone who thinks the rules are optional and has the tactical brilliance to make that philosophy work. As his aide busied himself with the report preparation, Vex 9 found himself staring at Maya Torres's photograph again. There was definitely something unsettling about those brown eyes. They held the kind of confidence that came from someone who had already figured out how to beat you and was just waiting for you to realize it. He had a feeling that this human problem was about to become much bigger than anyone in Imperial Command had anticipated. 6 months later, Commander Vex 9 stood in the ruins of what had once been the Imperial Command Center on Zentros Prime, watching smoke rise from the capital city's skyline. His perfectly pressed uniform was torn and stained, his 4 eyes bloodshot from sleepless nights, and his faith in imperial superiority had been systematically demolished by a human female who seemed to treat galactic warfare like some kind of elaborate joke. "Sir," came a voice behind him. Vex 9 turned to see Lieutenant Jax 5, one of the few officers still reporting for duty. The young Zenthari's normally blue skin had faded to a sickly gray, and his hands shook as he held his datapad. "We've received another transmission from Captain Torres." "Another surrender demand?" Vex 9 asked wearily. "Not exactly, sir. This one appears to be an educational video." "Show me." The holographic display flickered to life, revealing Maya Torres standing in what appeared to be the command bridge of a captured Imperial dreadnought. She had somehow managed to make the intimidating Zenthari warship look casual and welcoming, with what humans called fairy lights strung around the tactical displays, and a banner reading, "Welcome to Democracy 101, hanging from the ceiling. "Greetings, Imperial forces," Torres said cheerfully, her voice carrying that particular tone humans used when explaining obvious things to slow children. "This is your daily reminder that resistance to tyranny is not only morally justified, but also surprisingly profitable. Today's lesson covers the strategic advantages of treating your allies like actual people instead of expendable resources. She gestured to someone off-screen, and the display split to show footage from recent battles. Vex 9 recognized the engagement at the Corvin Nebula, where an Imperial fleet 3 times the size of Torres's forces had been systematically dismantled. As you can see from Exhibit A, Torres continued, when your troops actually believe in what they're fighting for, they tend to perform significantly better than when they're just following orders because someone with shiny badges told them to. Revolutionary concept, I know. The footage switched to show Imperial prisoners being treated in medical facilities, eating actual food instead of nutrition paste, and participating in what appeared to be recreational activities. Exhibit B demonstrates the shocking effectiveness of treating prisoners of war like human beings. Sorry, like sentient beings. Amazing what people will tell you when you give them decent coffee and ask nicely instead of threatening to space them. Vex 9 felt his stomach's twist as he recognized several high-ranking Imperial officers among the prisoners, all of whom appeared to be chatting comfortably with their captors. And finally, Exhibit C, Torres said, her grin becoming absolutely predatory. The galaxy-changing power of actually listening to local populations instead of assuming you know what's best for them. The display showed planet after planet celebrating their liberation from Imperial control, not the sullen compliance that usually followed Imperial occupation, but genuine celebration. People dancing in the streets, children playing games, families reuniting after years of separation. Turns out, Torres continued, when you stop treating entire species like inferior children who need constant supervision, they become remarkably cooperative. Who could have predicted that? She leaned forward, her brown eyes seeming to look directly at Vex 9 through the transmission. Now, I know what you're thinking. But, Captain Torres, how can we maintain order without crushing the spirits of billions of sentient beings? Well, here's the thing. And pay attention because this is important. You don't need to maintain order. You need to maintain justice. Order without justice is just organized oppression. And frankly, your organization skills aren't even that impressive. The transmission cut to a strategic overview of the galaxy, showing the current territorial situation. Vex 9 stared in horror at the display. Imperial control had been reduced to less than 20% of its former territory, and the red zones representing Torres's alliance now covered most of the outer rim and were rapidly expanding toward the core worlds. As of today, Torres announced, the Free Galaxy Alliance controls 83% of former Imperial territory, has the voluntary allegiance of over 200 species, and maintains active trade relationships with every major mercantile guild. Our unemployment rate is at an all-time low. Crime has decreased by 70% in liberated territories, and surprisingly, tax collection has actually improved now that people aren't being taxed to fund their own oppression. She paused, letting that information sink in. Oh, and we've also discovered that when you stop spending 90% of your budget on military hardware designed to intimidate your own citizens, you can afford things like education, healthcare, and infrastructure maintenance. Shocking, I know. The display switched back to Torres, who was now sitting casually in the Imperial command chair, her feet propped up on what had once been Admiral Keck 7's personal command console. So here's my final offer, and I'm only making it because I'm feeling generous today. Complete surrender of all Imperial forces, immediate transition to democratic governance for all core worlds, and full reparations for the approximately 47 trillion sentient beings you've been oppressing for the last 6 centuries. She checked what appeared to be a human timepiece on her wrist. "You have 24 standard hours to respond. After that, I'm afraid we'll be forced to demonstrate why picking a fight with a Deathworlder was the worst strategic decision in galactic history." The transmission ended with Torres waving cheerfully at the camera, as if she had just invited them to a pleasant social gathering instead of delivering an ultimatum that would reshape galactic civilization. Lieutenant Jax 5 was staring at the now blank display with something approaching awe. "Sir, how did she do it? How did one human female destroy an empire that lasted 6,000 years? Vex 9 considered the question carefully. Over the past 6 months, he had studied every battle, analyzed every strategic decision, and interviewed every prisoner who had been willing to talk. The answer, when he finally understood it, was both simple and terrifying. She didn't destroy the Empire, Jax 5. She proved it was already dead. Sir? Look at the data. Really look at it. Every world Torres liberated, every species that joined her alliance, every Imperial officer who defected to her cause. They weren't conquered, they were rescued. Vex 5's skin faded to an even paler gray. Sir, are you suggesting that the Empire was actually corrupt? Oppressive? Fundamentally unjust? Yes, Jax 5. That's exactly what I'm suggesting. Torres didn't win because she was a brilliant military strategist, though she certainly is that. She won because she offered people something we never did, a choice. Vex 9 walked to the window and looked out at the city below. Even now, with Imperial forces in full retreat, there were no signs of chaos or violence. The transition to Torres's administration had been remarkably smooth, largely because most of the population had been quietly hoping for exactly this outcome for decades. Every species in her alliance joined voluntarily. Every world that declared independence did so because they wanted to, not because they were forced to. Every Imperial officer who defected did so because they finally had a chance to serve something worth believing in. But, sir, the Empire brought order to the galaxy. We ended the species wars, established trade networks, created a unified legal system. Did we, Jax 5? Or did we just impose our will on everyone else and call it order? The young lieutenant was quiet for a long moment. What happens now, sir? Now! Vex 9 turned from the window and began removing his rank insignia. Now we learn what it means to be citizens instead of subjects. Sir, you're not seriously considering surrender? Absolutely. In fact, I'm going to do something that hasn't been done in Imperial history. I'm going to surrender unconditionally and request terms based on justice rather than power. The High Command will consider that treason. The High Command can consider whatever it likes from their prison cells. They're the ones who created this situation by refusing to acknowledge that ruling through fear and oppression eventually stops working. Vex 9 activated his personal communicator and set it to broadcast on all Imperial frequencies. This is Commander Vex 9 of the Imperial Defense Force. I am hereby formally surrendering all forces under my command to Captain Maya Torres and the Free Galaxy Alliance. To any Imperial personnel still listening, the war is over. We lost. More importantly, we deserved to lose. He paused, choosing his words carefully. For 6,000 years, we told ourselves that we were bringing civilization to the galaxy. We convinced ourselves that our way was the only way, that other species needed our guidance, and that resistance to Imperial authority was simply ignorance or malice. We were wrong. Captain Torres proved that in less than a year, without conquering a single world by force or oppressing a single population, The communication channel was completely silent. Across the galaxy, Imperial forces were listening to their commander commit what their training told them was the ultimate act of treason. She built an alliance based on cooperation instead of domination. She created prosperity through justice instead of exploitation. She achieved peace through understanding instead of intimidation. And she did it all while treating every species, including us, as equals deserving of respect and dignity. Vex 9 looked out at the city again, where Zenthari civilians were beginning to emerge from their homes and businesses, cautiously hopeful for the first time in generations. To Captain Torres, wherever you are, the Zenthari people formally request admission to the Free Galaxy Alliance. We're tired of being the bad guys. We're ready to learn how to be better. He ended the transmission and turned to Lieutenant Jax 5, who was staring at him with something approaching hero worship. Sir, that was either the most courageous thing I've ever witnessed, or the most insane. Probably both, Jax 5, but you know what? I feel better than I have in 40 years. The communicator crackled to life with an incoming transmission. The display showed Maya Torres still sitting in the command chair of the captured dreadnought, but now her expression was serious rather than mocking. Commander Vex 9, this is Captain Torres. I received your surrender and your request for Alliance membership. And, honestly, it's about damned time. I've been waiting months for someone in Imperial Command to figure out that this didn't have to be a fight to the death. Torres leaned forward, her voice becoming more formal. The Free Galaxy Alliance accepts the surrender of all Imperial forces under your command. Transition teams are already en route to facilitate the changeover of governmental systems. Your people will be treated with the same respect and dignity we've shown every other species that has joined our alliance. She paused, a slight smile returning to her face. Oh, and Vex 9? Your tactical analyses during the Proxima campaign were actually quite good. We could use someone with your strategic experience on the Alliance Defense Council if you're interested in a career change. Vex 9 felt something that he hadn't experienced in years. Hope. Captain Torres, it would be an honor to serve in a military organization that actually serves its people instead of oppressing them. Excellent. Welcome to the revolution, Commander. Or should I say, welcome to democracy. As the transmission ended, Lieutenant Jax 5 turned to his former commander with obvious curiosity. Sir, what do you think happens next? Vex 9 looked out at the city one final time, watching as Imperial banners were being replaced by the simple star and circle symbol of the Free Galaxy Alliance. For the first time in his long military career, the future looked bright. Next, Jax 5, we learn how to build something instead of just maintaining control over it. We figure out how to serve people instead of ruling them. And maybe, if we're very lucky, we become worthy of the second chance that Captain Maya Torres just gave us. In the distance, the first Alliance transport ships were beginning their landing approach, carrying supplies, medical aid, and hope to a world that had almost forgotten what those things looked like. The Zenthari Empire was dead. Long live the Free Galaxy Alliance. And somewhere in the galaxy, a human female who had been exiled for refusing to follow stupid orders was probably laughing at the beautiful absurdity of it all.